What's going on, guys? Early Saturday morning garage session. We have some things to install in the Q50, so we're gonna jump right into it. If you watched a previous video, you know some of the parts that came in recently for this car. So we're gonna get her all situated today. Let's pull everything out. So what we have here, as you saw in the previous video or a previous video, we have the Z1 Motorsports rear subframe bushing collars. So this should help stiffen the rear end up of the Q50, making it even more planted than it already is with the Tane lowering springs and Hotchkiss sway bar. Now, if you're not super familiar with what these subframe bushing collars do, we'll get a closer look at the subframe itself when we get under the vehicle, but just give you a quick overview. These Infiniti cars, these Q50s in particular, are set up to be sort of luxury sedans, right? So ride quality is of high importance to the engineers and manufacturers in making these cars. And how they achieve that ride quality comes down to a bunch of different components, obviously a softer suspension, nice interior components, but also rubber bushings in the subframe. It's meant to absorb some of that flex in the chassis. It's meant to absorb some of those noises that the chassis creates as it's being twisted and torqued on the road. And just gives the car an overall softer feel. However, it does take away from some of the car's performance capabilities. You can sort of compare it to a softer suspension setup in a vehicle. It feels nice as you ride because it absorbs all those bumps and you just kind of flow with the vehicle. However, when you really start to push the car, you can feel that squish. You know, it's not as responsive, it doesn't feel as planted, it doesn't feel as gripped up. So even though we have the car lowered and we have the Hotchkiss sway bars installed, there's still performance left in. There's still grip and control and stability left over in this car. So that's what we hope to achieve and attain with these subframe bushing collars. We're going to stiffen those rubber bushings up by installing these collars, and it should make the car a little bit more rigid. Now, with that being said, we're going to lose some more of that ride quality. The chassis flex is not going to be absorbed. We're gonna feel it. We'll probably feel additional road vibration. We'll probably hear some extra creaks and clinks and stuff like that because it's just the nature of these things. It's those absorption qualities of the rubber bushings are being taken away or just hindered at least. So there's some give and take. If you want the car to be fast and planted and under control, you sometimes have to give up some of those luxury qualities. But let's get right into this install. All right, so there's a couple of things that you're going to want to have on hand to do this project. Working underneath the car, light is limited even if you're doing it during the day, so some light source, flashlight, trouble light of some kind is good. You'll need a ratchet wrench or two with a couple of different extensions, breaker bar possibly if you don't have any power tools. You'll definitely need a 10mm socket. You'll need a 14mm deep socket. Well, you won't need the deep socket. Maybe, yeah, you will. You'll need that. Another extension, this is just a small 20-volt hammer drill or impact drill. This works really good, gets you in tight spots if you don't have air. This is highly recommended. Pneumatic impact gun, definitely helpful when you're breaking those subframe bolts loose. Otherwise, that's what the breaker bar is for, but this came in handy. And then you'll need a 19mm socket for those bushing, the subframe bolts. Nuts, sorry. Razor blade, and possibly a screwdriver. And of course, you're going to want some WD-40. That's essential for getting those collars into the bushings as easily as possible. Got to remove the plastic shields, 3 10mm bolts. Little plastic shields have been removed, revealing some of the bolts we have to get at. We're first looking at the front subframe, front portion of the subframe. Out here, these are 14mm bolts that we gotta remove. Sorry, this is awkward as shit. And then we move up to the rear portion. And these are going to be 19mm nuts. You're definitely gonna want an impact tool. Again, 19mm socket, which is gonna get you the ability to loosen these 19 millimeter nuts. So we have the subframe supported, and now we're just going to slowly let it down so we create some space. Again, I left the exhaust on, but I also left the nuts on, just for some added reassurance, but just hopefully we can get this lowered enough to where we can slip the collars in on all four corners and call it a day. You want some WD-40 as well. So you can take a look at the instructions from Z1 Motorsports. We're going to start with the front upper collar, which is in letter C. You can see here in the directions. And then so we're working right there. So we're going to lower this down slowly and lube them up and see what we can do. Alright, so we are lowered down as much as the nuts will allow us to lower the subframe down, so we'll see if this is good enough. But I'm going to start to lube these up. So you can see it there. It actually slid right in, but it kind of pushes itself out, so you can get it down in there flush. You might have to rotate it and finagle it a little bit, but it'll slide down in there and be flush with the bushing itself once you get it into the right location. Moving on to the rear uppers, we need to take this little guy off here, so just get a good blade, slice it off, and then we're going to see if we got enough room to put letter D bushing up in here, which is this guy right here. Easy enough. Alright, so let's see, you just have to rotate. You can actually put your finger in there and feel some ridges that won't let it go down, so you just rotate it till they spin, till the legs on this collar slide down in between it, and then there's a, you can feel it's flush right here with the rubber bushing that's, so that should do just fine. Yeah. Moving on. Both uppers are in. You can see it. A little trick is turn the opening of the collar toward you. And then, like I said, stick your fingers down in the bushing itself and you can feel the ridge. So you know that those little tabs on the collar itself can slide down in the gaps next to them. But if you leave the opening of the collar toward you, it just gives you some more easier access if you have to try to push them one way or the other. You can get a screwdriver in there and just kind of wedge it. Use a little leverage to rotate them. Make sure you lube them up really good, that helps a lot. Alright, so I've raised the subframe up a little ways, actually quite a ways, so we can remove the rear lower collar, which is number B, and you can see the shape of this collar will fit right in the shape. I'm going to lube it up just a little bit, just to be sure it slides in nicely. We're in. Plenty of lube. There we go. Fits up nice and tight. Good to go. Doing the same in that slot. And once we put those collars in, then we raise the subframe, connect everything back up, and we're done. You can actually see how this collar will fit on here, so you can get an idea of the orientation. Then we're just going to fit her up in that hole there. Get an idea. So you can see orientation has to be like, not like this, because it'll hit like this, so it'll slide up in there. like so. Okay. Put the bracket, or the, whatever you want to call it, the brace back in place. I'll put the plate on the bottom of this, and we'll get it raised up. All right, all of them are, what are we looking here? Back on, we got the shields back on. Everything is good to go. Let's drop this sucker. You guys, don't let my sweat fool you. It's hot as balls out here. It's not a hard job at all to do this. If you are mechanically inclined at all, it could take an hour or two. Doing it for the first time trying to film, I'd say it's probably right at about an hour, but if I were to do this again with not worrying about cameras or angles or whatever, you could probably do it in 30 minutes. Not a hard job at all. Definitely going to take you longer if you have to remove the exhaust. I did not. If you're rocking the Speed Culture Studios mid-muffler Borla mid-muffler exhaust system in your shop installed it even close to how the shop installed mine, you will not need to remove that at all. I didn't loosen any bolts. I didn't take any hangers off. Nothing whatsoever. Simple. So that saved a ton of time, admittedly. So this should really make the car feel much more planted. So I guess the thing to do would be to drive it around the block. We'll test it out, and then I'm going to do an official kind of review video coming up down the road after I get a chance to drive this car a little bit more and really get a sense of how these subframe bushing collars helped. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about it. I'll put a link in the description below to these collars if you want to do this installation. All right, let's just see how this thing feels in regular, typical driving situations. Just leaving the driveway right now. Right away, initially, I'll say that I can feel the cracks in the asphalt as I hit them. They just feel a little, there's just a little more of a jolt to them. It's not significant, but I can definitely feel them. You can feel the imperfections in the road, certainly, more than I could before. I have to say that I was anticipating more creaks and groans and noises, but I'm honestly not hearing anything. Obviously, I'm not pushing the car hard or doing anything crazy, but even hitting some of these, intentionally hitting some of these little cracks and divots in the road right now, just to see, I'm not hearing anything. But like I said, there's definitely more of a jolt coming from the rear end when you hit some of these imperfections, so we can certainly tell that the rubber bushings are no longer there. Well, obviously they're still there. They're just not able to absorb the shocks and vibrations like they were before. But the car doesn't feel bad at all. I really can't wait to get this thing in the mountains now and really feel if those collars do their job or not. And also, even before that, I need to do a couple of launches and see. If you take a look at one of the videos that Z1 Motorsports has about these collars, I think it's Z1, I think they did a driving video where you can see underneath the car all of the flex in that rear subframe when they launch and even just accelerate, you know, from a roll. The whole back end kind of squats as those bushings kind of compress and torque, and eliminating that is going to put all of that torque from the wheels to the ground rather than it being lost through the chassis. So it's really exciting for, you know, 169 or 189, something like that, for under 200 bucks. It's not bad if they really do what they should do, and I have a feeling they will. Obviously, combined with the Tane lowering springs and the Hotchkiss sway bars, this thing should rock and roll now in the corners. I'm super excited. So like I said, not too bad of an installation, not too bad at all. You should be able to do it in just a couple of hours. And if you've done anything like this before, 30 minutes, easy, especially if you don't have to take the exhaust system down. So pretty amped about that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comments section below. I appreciate you guys watching very much. Stay tuned, a lot of good stuff coming for the channel and a lot of big giveaways between now and 10,000 subscribers. So it's going to be exciting next few months. So stick around with me. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.